After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party backfired, landing her in jail and a divorce. For the last 7 years, I, 29F, have been wed to Harry. Except for his relationship to his sister, Kayla, who brings all the negative into our life, I enjoy everything about our marriage. Now don't get me wrong, when I initially met Kayla, I loved her. But with time, I rapidly changed my view. She is poisonous, manipulative, and really negative. Knowing the kind of person she is, I have worked hard over years to be on her good side. My husband dated Syl's best friend when he was 17 in the past, but they subsequently broke up since he felt under pressure to be with her because of Syl. His sister said he and another friend of hers should be together when he turned 23 and discovered he was single, but he disagreed. She went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to wed someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents hardly really listened to her throughout their great battle. While my husband and I were meeting and falling in love, his parents were quite encouraging, but Syl always treated me coldly. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no apparent reason whenever I was present, reminding him of how well they were doing and suggesting how he could get in touch with them. This continued for some time. Harry also thought this strange and would ask her to stop bringing up his exes. I was not the only one who saw this. Then Syl would get enraged and start mocking me, claiming I was jealous and Harry shouldn't be with someone like me. Syl would deliberately invite one of Harry's exes whenever his parents would call us for supper, saying she had inadvertently come across them that day and had to ask them politely. She doesn't follow me, but she checks my Instagram constantly as well. Since I have a public account, I observed she is usually the first person to see my stories. Should a man comment on my photograph, she would then go to her brother and grumble over how I was sharing indecent images of myself. Harry and I would actually chuckle at her claims. She persuaded Harry to split off with me when he and I agreed to live together, telling him I had many defects as a woman and that she could find someone far better than him. Since I had been just friendly to her all along, this comment really wounded me. Sadly, Sil's treatment of me got even more bad as soon as Harry and I were engaged. Everyone started applauding Harry and me as we revealed our engagement, but I observed Kayla was somewhat quiet. Then, startled everyone, she sprang up from her chair and left our gathering. Later, she called Harry, sobbing and yelling about how she didn't value receiving the news with everyone else as she felt she was the closest to him and deserved to be the first one to know of his engagement. Later on, she messaged me nearly borderline threateningly, advising me on how I should treat her brother as she had always been the only female in his life. I nearly shuddered over the strange message. I left her message on scene, which I know must have offended her even more, not even bothered responding. Every time Syl saw me, she started to progressively ignore me. She stayed involved in all the wedding preparations for whatever reason, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. Though both my future mother-in-law and fiancé called her out on it several times, her criticism of the wedding reached a whole new level as she freely expressed her unhappiness with my decisions. Her actions persisted. One day, Kayla overheard me talking about the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law. She started to make fun of me right away, stating how my decision had no class and how this was why she wanted her brother to wed someone better. For me, that was the tipping point and I lost control. I made it plain to her that she was no longer invited to our wedding and yelled at her that I could not stand her continual taunting and criticism anymore. Shocked and gasping in surprise as if she had never expected me to challenge her, Kayla was infuriated even by my mother-in-law, who backed me. Later on, Kayla contacted Harry, moaning about how I embarrassed her and insisting he should control me since I would be his wife. Harry insisted strongly that he supported my choice and that she would not be invited to the wedding should she not atone. She grudgingly texted me a sincere apology. I saw it and, once more, left on read. I was already tired from getting ready for my wedding, and I wanted nothing to do with her drama. She did visit our wedding in the end since I wanted her to not criticize us afterward. Everyone, including the guests, seemed to have no issue following the pink tones and pastels chosen for my wedding. But Syl arrived looking as though she were attending a funeral, a black floor-length gown with a veil. To put it mildly, we were stunned. Syl visited everyone sharing her grief at losing her brother to another woman. My husband approached Syl about her discomfort with her wedding attire at the reception. Saying that she had the right to wear whatever she chose and that I was too domineering, she sought to portray the victim. When her non-stop scene-making persisted, my mother-in-law and father-in-law ultimately ordered her to leave. It was embarrassing for me. Ever since that day I avoid her. I forbade Syl anywhere near our kid when I delivered my son Nate. She tried to oppose it but my husband's parents had my back. They supported my choice and knew exactly why I wanted Syl far from my infant. Syl suffered a miscarriage with her then-boyfriend Jamie 2 years ago and it totally shattered her. For everyone, that was indeed a depressing period. Given our already childbearing status, Harry and I felt bad for her. We chose to be somewhat more lenient following her miscarriage. She could connect with our kid Nate, so we would welcome her to our house. Despite her behavior with me, she has been rather lovely to our son, really shocking. She looked to have changed at first, but with time she returned to her former self. She constantly talks about how difficult her life is, how things never seem to go for her, and blames ex-friends or managers for upsetting her life. I have found over time that she is never wrong in her thinking. She is always attempting to get people on her side by playing the victim card and hardly acknowledges any flaws in confrontations. She chose to get married this year and invited everyone to save us. Given our relationship seemed to have improved, Harry was surprised to learn we were not invited. She began to explain how she won't let me come since I would cause disturbance to her wedding when we questioned her about it. Having never done anything to her, I phoned and asked her why she would think something like that. Kayla began to tell how she had deliberately dressed in all black for our wedding, so now she was worried that I might do the same and this was why she wanted me off-site. I informed my spouse straightforwardly about how manipulative she was, outraged about it. After discussing with his parents, Harry decided to let Sil know they would neither be attending the wedding nor would they pay for it. This turned Sil to tears, and she began to blame me for starting this disaster. Her husband told her she had no right to be pointing fingers at me as she had freely admitted her own error. Kayla, however, explained her behavior by stating that I should just get over it since our wedding was long ago. Later, she contacted me to apologize and ask for forgiveness as FIL and MIL were still not paying for her wedding. Though I hate to say it, Kayla can be quite charming and convincing when she wants something. I wanted to just go forward from the past and forgave her. Her wedding to Jamie went perfectly. We all showed up and had fun. Not even 6 months later, Kayla appeared at our door grumbling about her marriage failing. For a few days, Harry and I let her stay with us where she would spend endless hours venting about her husband. They appeared to be struggling to conceive, and Kayla was obviously blaming Jamie for everything. When I went to speak to Kayla, she insisted it was entirely her husband's responsibility. She would be hyper-focused on our lives and try to create things that didn't exist when she was not grumbling about her husband. For instance, usually every morning before heading to work I visit the gym. When I'm running late, I occasionally grab my work clothes so I may finish my workout, have a bath, and change into my business wear. Sael observed this for some time and would have many questions about it, including why I was bathing or why I even needed to visit the gym. I didn't give it much thought and would tell her how I liked keeping my weight and how I disliked visiting the office all sweaty. She would nod and lick her lips. Mill was telling us about a friend of hers who was divorcing right at lunch. She left her friend's spouse and grabbed half of his assets after learning about his adultery with her. Sael stopped her abruptly to ask my husband whether he and I had signed a prenup before we were married. We paused to stare at her. We stopped eating. She glanced at my husband expectantly as if I hadn't even arrived. My husband told her straightforwardly that he is not someone who minces his words as he and I both made rather good money and we felt no need for a prenup. Sil snorted and began to say that he could be blindsided any day and that cheats abound today. Her statements offended me, therefore I asked her to clarify exactly what she meant. Sil then began to remark how I was obviously meeting someone as I was usually carrying change of clothing everywhere and that, as Harry's sister, it was her obligation to warn her brother. These were shocking remarks for me. Phil and MIL arrived right away to save her from continuing to fabricate such things and advised she shouldn't interfere with others' affairs. Without missing a beat, Sil continued to emphasize how she was only trying to be there for her brother and began to joke if our son Nate was indeed Harry's son since he didn't quite look like him. I swear I watched the redness of wrath on my husband's face. In my life, I never had seen him this enraged. Looking Kayla squarely in the eye, he informed her that she was not a mother yet as she did not deserve to be one and that her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla's lips hung in stunned disbelief. MIL and Phil simply watched silently as my husband left Kayla complaining about her being a shameless person trying to ruin everything since her life had nothing to offer. She was merely a loser, he informed her, doing nothing all day while her husband worked nonstop. He kept saying that since she was plainly projecting, she should focus on her own marriage instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups. Reduced to tears, Kayla began to wail. Expecting comfort, she turned to Jamie, seated just next to her, but he never spoke. My husband never has this kind of mental collapse. She eventually got up from her chair and dashed into the toilet. My husband was boiling over. I stroked his hand and Mill arrived to cool him down. Understanding just how annoying she could be, I nodded as he apologized for what his sister had said about our son. Having taken enough from Kayla over the years, I was somewhat relieved that my husband stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie but totally ignored Kayla once he cooled off. That day following lunch, we returned to no interaction with Kayla. Her actions were impacting my husband in addition to me. We simply barred her from everything so she could get in touch with us. After lunch, Mil and Phil spoke with us and decided Kayla had gone too far this time. They could see how their usually quiet son had gone wild after Kayla had persisted in pushing him. We last spoke with her a year ago, and everything has been running without problems. 2 months ago I discovered what I was expecting. Given our lack of effort, this was quite unexpected. To welcome another family member makes my spouse and me blessed. We decided to let everyone know on my husband's birthday since we were waiting for the proper moment to do so. Wanting to honor Harry, Mil and Phil were throwing a great celebration in their lawn. Invited were our close friends and relatives. Sil chose to show her face after hearing about this from others. When we saw her, my husband and I staggered. Coming to hug Harry, Sil told him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was for their last talk. Taking my hand, my spouse advised his sister to be apologetic to me because she had pointed fingers at my character. Sil nodded, looked at me, then apologized. She informed me how she had been attending therapy for the previous few months and came to see how inappropriate it was for her to treat me like that. Though I disagreed with everything she said, I nodded as I wanted to be polite to her in front of everyone. Since this was a gathering for my husband, Mil and Phil checked in on us and informed us that should we feel uncomfortable, they would kick her out as they had no knowledge she would be arriving. Harry, however, insisted on not creating a scene, hence we decided to leave this go. It seemed strange as Sil was laughing and socializing with everyone during the celebration. She mentioned visiting a therapist, so I wanted to provide her the benefit of the doubt even though she appeared overly optimistic, completely not her nature. Harry spoke movingly about how he thought he was the luckiest man on earth, appreciative of yet another year spent with a lady like me, when it came time to cut the cake. His remarks made me flush with delight. As we were when we first started dating all those years ago, I couldn't help but value the fact that my husband and I were still intensely in love. Then Harry and I made the decision to let everyone know some fantastic news. Grinning, we said we were having a baby and everyone paused to consider before yelling in delight. My mother rushed up to hug me and started to cry. As Phil saluted Harry and myself, tears streamed down his face. Everyone was eager to know whether we had chosen baby names and was clearly delighted for us. Sil was the one sore thumb that caught out. She seemed stunned. Her mood changed and she simply turned away from us, appearing irritated, so I assumed maybe she was processing things slowly. Though I was a little concerned, thinking she would ruin yet another party for us, I was sidetracked with other individuals approaching to chat. I got up to assist my in-laws carry lunch, but Rick and my parents begged me to stay seated, telling me I should not even move at this point. Sil approached me beaming as I was calmly waiting for my husband to bring me a meal. Lively saying that she personally wanted to offer me dinner, since she was so excited about my pregnancy, she handed me a dish. She even said as she passed me the plate about how she wanted to make it up to me for all the times she had been nasty to me in the past. I nodded and politely approved. She then turned to go. I was ready to start digging when I fortunately found she had put shrimp on my dish. I know I am quite allergic to shrimp, hence I was surprised Sil even brought me this. Disappointed, I shook my head and got up to get my own lunch. Jamie approached me at that point to wish well on my pregnancy. After a little conversation, he asked me why I hadn't been eating. Jamie reassured me not to worry and removed the dish from my hands after I pointed out how Sil had served me shrimp, probably by error. Since he enjoyed eating shrimp, he told me he could have this dish. I could buy a fresh plate for myself. I nodded, grinned, then turned aside. Jamie began to puke and retch across this dish 5 minutes later, not even 5. Concerned, everyone stopped eating and watched him stagger to get out of his seat. Concerned Harry and Kayla hurried towards him. Jamie gestured at his plate, then at his throat. Our eyes grew wide with amazement as we realized what he had eaten definitely made something wrong with him evident. Jamie passed out, then everyone gasped in amazement and worry. Kayla hurried over to examine his dish, and her eyes grew shocked. She turned to stare at me and inquired whether I had handed her husband my plate. I nodded. Someone called for an ambulance amid the tumult, and he was hurried to the hospital. Through all of this, Kayla was sobbing nonstop and was staring angrily at me. Jamie had been poisoned, we were told later on. Knowing that the plate belonged originally to me, I nearly passed out upon hearing this. Jamie consumed may have poisoned my baby and me. Not yet known to Harry, Mil, Fel, or my parents is this. Since nobody knew what was in the food he consumed that had caused him to faint in this manner, the police were summoned to get evidence from it. Jamie is still in recovery in the hospital while I'm typing this. Kayla stayed with him overnight. Relatives calling to find out what happened to Jamie and who might have poisoned him have my husband and I fielding calls. What has transpired shakes Mil and Phil. They are sleeping over at our house since they are terrified to return back to their house. Nobody knows what happened abruptly while everything was going so nicely. Tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and how Kayla had come and presented it to me makes me terribly afraid. Should this evolve into an inquiry, I will have to tell the cops the truth. Though most importantly I am now rather concerned about what my Sil could do to me, I feel quite awful about what has transpired. I don't want to be around her, nor can I bring my kids anywhere close to her as she obviously has no restraints about trying to poison me. I feel bad about handing Jamie my meal and maybe contaminating my bill. Update 1. Whoa, thanks for the thousands of comments on this post in just a few hours. I never would have guessed I could have received these many answers. I typed this earlier and had shaking hands. I haven't been able to sleep. Though what everyone says, I do feel somewhat accountable for the event involving my bill. I should have simply tossed the dish away. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I keep crying about his future. Knowing something is awry, my hubby has been hovering close to me. Though he doesn't know what I know about his sister, he believes I'm only worried. I agree with the remarks saying I should get down and gently chat to everyone. Although I'm not sure if everyone will believe me, Mil and Phil do have security cameras set all around the house. Given that this birthday celebration took place in their backyard, I am confident they could check and confirm via their cameras that Kayla presented me the plate. I'll speak with everyone tonight then update. Update 2, we then chatted, and I am very happy to have the nicest in-laws on planet Earth. Mil and Phil are already staying over with us, so I sat down with Harry and them over dinner to let them know I had something crucial to share. I began by inhaling deeply, the weight of the circumstances slumping on my shoulders. Everyone gathered around. I related the birthday party's events, including how Sil had handed me a plate of prawns and Jamie had unintentionally consumed it, causing his sickness. Their shock and incredulity reflected my own as I spoke. Mil and Phil looked at each other, clearly worried. Harry's face transformed from uncertainty to rage. I went on expressing my concern about Sil's intentions and past attempts to hurt me. Faced with the possible repercussions for myself and our unborn kid, I hesitated to share this material. Being the pragmatic woman Mil is, she advised right away looking at the security camera tape. Given the gravity of the matter, Phil nodded in agreement. Though clearly offended, Harry stayed quiet to process the startling disclosure. Reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was indisputable. The video shows Sil presenting to me the poisoned plate and then what happened to cause Jamie's suffering. The weight of the data made no space for uncertainty. As the knowledge sank in, emotions ran strong. Now totally aware of his sister's evil intentions, Harry battled to control his wrath. Their daughter's activities horrified Mil and Phil, who also found the extent she had gone to cause disturbance shocking. Stunned in silence, we tried to figure out why she would act in such a manner. Given this is a very serious issue, my in-laws have opted to forward this material to the police following this disclosure. Jamie is the one who has to lodge charges on Sil, hence Phil and my husband will be visiting and meeting him after he recovers. I want to cry every time I consider how I let Jamie have my poisoned dish. I have no idea how Jamie will react. I am very anxious about him, so I cannot eat anything right or sleep. I will let you know about anything noteworthy. Update 3. Alright lads, I'm back with an update at last. Although I know it has been a month since my previous update, right now I'm a pregnant woman experiencing a lot. First things first, she was detained after seeing the proof. My in-laws handed the recording to the police. Kayla admitted everything right away and did not even dispute the claims. She started crying. Jamie was as startled as any of us when my husband approached him about what had transpired. Tell him he would always be a part of our family regardless of what he decided to do. My husband advised him to press charges against his sister since this was such a wicked thing to do. Once Jamie recovered, he not only chose to prosecute charges but also sought divorce. Emotional and begging them to pardon her, Kayla called Mil and Phil. As it happens, Kayla is pregnant herself. She tried to control them by telling them they should do this for the benefit of their granddaughter, begging them to bail her out. Phil strongly advised her, nevertheless, that she should at last learn to own her acts and that they were done coddling her. Though Mil is quite depressed about what is happening to her daughter, she knows that her actions cannot be simply forgiven. The cops discovered proof she had tampered with the meal, meant to damage me, which backfired and resulted in injury to her husband. She has been charged with several offenses including risking life, causing damage, and tampering with food, thereby compromising integrity. Saying how this was all my fault anyhow, Kayla had been pleading Jamie not to charge her. Fortunately, Jamie's mind is set on punishing her. Her court hearing will begin shortly. I doubt she can flee this time. My son and I are doing okay, to everyone inquiring. In the meantime, about what his aunt has done, he is clueless. We want our son to know and avoid these circumstances, hence Harry and I have discussed and we do intend to sit down with him and tell him the truth. Having a difficult but absolutely vital conversation with a young child will be challenging but essential. As instructed by my doctor, I also get frequent ultrasounds for my pregnancy every 2 weeks. We want the kid to be a surprise, hence we do not intend to find out her gender. Knowing what has happened to Kayla, my parents have been somewhat protective of me. They are urging me to see treatment since they are concerned this could compromise my psychological well-being during the pregnancy. I agree with them as, while behaving normally, I have a deep-rooted phobia of what Kayla did to my meals and avoid eating any outside food or anything I have not made myself. Hopefully, my husband will help me to overcome this illogical phobia as he knows about it and supports me all through. Update 4. I last checked 8 months ago. Kayla is a prisoner right now. She came out guilty on the allegations. Though I never went to her court hearings, occasionally my in-laws would tell me how Kayla came clean to the court admitting years of jealousy of me. She had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying my husband, hence when he started dating me, she would always try to harass me since she never wanted an outsider to marry her brother. She became jealous when we told my husband's birthday party we were expecting as she was also going to reveal her pregnancy. She wanted to share her wonderful news since she had miscarried once, but she felt we stole her opportunity to shine. She became so enraged then, from her pregnancy hormones, mixed a little bit of rat poison with my supper. She said she wanted me to wind up in the hospital but she never wanted to physically hurt the baby or myself. She said she deserved a reduced punishment as she never expected me to offer her husband my plate and since I essentially poisoned her spouse. Of course, the judge answered her pleadings. She was put to prison and will be far from our life for some considerable while. Jamie is also at last free since she has also effectively divorced him. We have seen him over the months and keep including him into our family events whenever we can. He informed me that it was never my fault when we spoke and I profusely apologized to him for handing my plate to him. Hearing that I had been rehearsing it over and over again in my thoughts, wishing I could have done things differently so he was never poisoned, I started to cry. That Jamie is doing well right now makes me happy. Regarding Harry and myself, our family now boasts a baby daughter. Our daughter's presence has warmed and lit our life despite the shadows of the past still there. Being a big brother makes our son Nate very happy, and he has been loving and caring toward his little sister. Seeing our kids connect makes us appreciate things. My parents and in-laws have been there for us all through, guiding us through this new phase of our life.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
Caught my spoiled sister kissing my boyfriend a week before her wedding. Told her fiancé, thought he ignored it, but he shocked everyone at the wedding. As a 28-year-old woman, I found myself in a challenging situation involving my 26-year-old sister and my 29-year-old boyfriend. My sister's wedding was fast approaching, and I began to notice that her behavior around my boyfriend was becoming increasingly peculiar. Initially, it wasn't anything overt, just small, subtle actions that left me feeling uneasy. It began with seemingly innocent comments where my sister would often say things like, "Wow, you're so funny," in response to my boyfriend's jokes, even when they were not particularly amusing. She laughed a bit too enthusiastically at everything he said. At first I tried to dismiss it, thinking that perhaps she was just being overly friendly due to the excitement surrounding the upcoming wedding. However, as time passed, I began to notice more troubling signs. She started to find excuses to touch him casually, like placing a hand on his arm during a conversation or lightly bumping into him as she walked past. These gestures were subtle yet unmistakable. I also observed her eyes lingering on him a bit too long when he wasn't looking, which made my stomach churn with discomfort. One evening, after we returned home from a family dinner where my sister had been particularly flirtatious, I decided to talk to my boyfriend about it. I turned to him and asked, "Did you notice how Sarah was behaving tonight?" He looked at me with confusion and replied, "What do you mean?" I then explained the behaviors I had observed, the excessive laughing, the unnecessary touching and the lingering glances. He listened, but after a moment he simply shrugged and said, "I think you're overthinking it. She's probably just excited about the wedding. It's harmless." Despite his reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The situation didn't feel harmless to me at all. Despite my boyfriend's reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I decided to keep a closer eye on things, hoping that I was just overreacting and that my suspicions were unfounded. But the next few weeks were tense. Every time we were around my sister, I found myself constantly watching her, noticing every little thing she did. It became clear that she was always trying to position herself near my boyfriend. She would often sit next to him whenever she could, and she seemed to find endless excuses to ask for his help with wedding-related tasks, even when I was standing right there. One day, we were all at my parents' house for a family barbecue. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom, and when I returned, I saw something that made my heart sink. My sister and my boyfriend were talking quietly in a corner of the yard, standing unusually close to one another. My sister was giggling at something he said, a sound that made my stomach churn with unease. The moment they noticed me, they quickly stepped apart, and my sister walked away as if nothing had happened. I felt a wave of nausea and anger but decided not to confront them on the spot, not wanting to create a scene at a family gathering. Instead, I waited until we got home that night. When we were alone, I tried to approach the topic as calmly as I could. I asked my boyfriend what he and my sister had been discussing earlier. He seemed surprised by my question and explained that they were just talking about some wedding details, like the music selection. His response didn't satisfy me. I couldn't help but question why such a simple conversation required them to stand so close together. He sighed, clearly frustrated, and tried to dismiss my concerns. He assured me once again that there was nothing going on, insisting that my sister was just being friendly. But by this point, I couldn't hold back my feelings any longer. I expressed my frustration, pointing out that my sister was practically throwing herself at him, and he wasn't doing anything to stop it. My words seemed to hurt him, and he looked at me with a pained expression, asking what exactly I expected him to do. He reminded me that she was my sister, and he was simply trying to be polite. Telling her to back off seemed out of the question to him. I told him that he could at least set some boundaries, making it clear that he wasn't interested in anything more than a friendly relationship. But he insisted that he wasn't interested in her at all, claiming there was nothing to clarify because I was seeing problems that didn't exist. Our conversation went in circles, with neither of us willing to see the other's point of view, leaving us both frustrated and unsure of what to do next. After arguing for a while without any resolution, it became clear that our conversation was going nowhere. My boyfriend kept insisting that I was just imagining things, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get him to see what was so painfully obvious to me. In the end, we both went to bed feeling angry and frustrated with the issue still unresolved. The following day, I realized that I needed to confront my sister directly. It was clear that avoiding the issue was only making things worse. So I decided to call her and ask if we could meet up for coffee. She readily agreed, her voice cheerful and seemingly unaware of my growing concerns. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near her apartment. When we met, I was nervous, my hands trembling slightly as I stirred my coffee. My sister, on the other hand, was in high spirits, chatting enthusiastically about her wedding plans. She seemed completely oblivious to my discomfort, which only made the situation more difficult for me. After a few minutes of listening to her talk, I realized I couldn't hold it in any longer. I interrupted her mid-sentence, my voice betraying the seriousness of what I was about to say. I told her that we needed to discuss something important. My sister, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone, looked at me with surprise and asked what was wrong. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I began to explain. I told her that I had noticed how she had been behaving around Tom, my boyfriend, and that it was making me uncomfortable. I mentioned the flirting, the casual touches, and the lingering looks, things that had been bothering me for some time. I emphasized that her behavior needed to stop. As I spoke, I watched her face transform through a range of emotions. At first, there was surprise, then confusion, and finally, anger. She demanded to know what I was talking about, vehemently denying that she had been flirting with Tom at all. I refused to back down, insisting that she had been doing exactly that, whether she realized it or not. I explained that her actions were not only inappropriate but were also causing me a great deal of distress. She responded with a laugh, though it was far from a genuine one. She told me I was being ridiculous, dismissing my concerns by saying that Tom was practically family and that she was just being friendly. However, her words did little to ease the tension between us, and I could tell that this conversation had struck a nerve. As I sat there, it became clear that this was not going to be an easy issue to resolve, and the rift between us was likely only going to deepen. I couldn't hold back any longer and expressed my frustrations, pointing out that it was more than just friendliness. I explained that she was constantly finding excuses to be near my boyfriend, to touch him, and to laugh at all his jokes, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. To me, it was clear what she was doing, and it was making me increasingly uncomfortable. As I spoke, I could see her face turn red with anger and disbelief. She was clearly shocked by my accusations, especially since they came so close to her wedding. She responded with a sharp retort, questioning my confidence and suggesting that I must be deeply insecure to accuse her of such behavior. Her words stung, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I tried to explain that my concerns weren't about insecurity, but rather about respect. I told her she was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed, and that her behavior needed to stop immediately. Suddenly, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, signaling the end of our conversation. She declared that she wasn't going to sit there and listen to what she considered paranoid and ridiculous accusations. She made it clear that if I couldn't trust my own sister, then that was my problem, not hers. With that, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me alone with a swirl of emotions. I felt awful and began to question myself. Had I overreacted? Was I really just being paranoid? When I returned home, my boyfriend immediately noticed that something was wrong. He asked me what had happened and I recounted the conversation I had just had with my sister. As I shared the details, I could see the concern growing on his face. When I finished, he let out a heavy sigh and told me that he thought I had made a big mistake. He was worried that Sarah would be deeply hurt, especially with her wedding just around the corner. Feeling defensive, I asked him if he was taking her side. He quickly reassured me that he wasn't taking sides, but he expressed his doubts that Sarah had been flirting with him. Even if she had been, which he found unlikely, he believed that confronting her in such a direct way was not the best approach to handling the situation. His words left me feeling even more conflicted, unsure of whether I had done the right thing or not. As I felt tears welling up in my eyes, I couldn't help but ask, so what was I supposed to do? Just ignore it? The frustration and hurt were clear in my voice. Sensing my distress, my boyfriend walked over and gently wrapped his arms around me. He suggested that perhaps I could have handled things differently, that maybe I could have talked to him more about it first or approached Sarah in a way that was less confrontational. He expressed concern that now, with the way things had unfolded, Sarah was likely upset with both of us, and that this could cast a shadow over her upcoming wedding, making everything feel incredibly awkward. Feeling overwhelmed, I pulled away from his embrace and questioned him. So this is all my fault? I needed to understand if he truly believed that I was to blame for the situation. He sighed deeply, clearly struggling to find the right words, and explained that he didn't mean to place the blame solely on me. However, he did think that I might have overreacted, letting my emotions get the better of me. We continued to argue for a while, but it became evident that we were not going to reach a resolution. There was a clear disconnect in our perspectives, and neither of us seemed willing to fully understand the other's point of view. Eventually, he decided to go to bed, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts and doubts. The days that followed were filled with tension. My sister had stopped speaking to me entirely, creating a painful distance between us. My parents, having noticed Sarah's distress, called me, wanting to know why she was so upset. I tried to explain the situation to them, but I could tell from their responses that they too believed I had overreacted. As the wedding day drew closer, I found myself increasingly uncertain about what to do. I was supposed to be a bridesmaid, an important role that now felt more like a burden. I wasn't even sure if Sarah still wanted me to be part of her big day. My boyfriend, on the other hand, was still invited, and he suggested that we both attend to show that there were no hard feelings. But the thought of standing there, watching my sister walk down the aisle while knowing how angry and hurt she was, made me feel physically ill. The entire situation had become a tangled mess, and I didn't know how to untangle it without causing even more pain. Several times I tried to phone Sarah, but she didn't answer. She never answered when I left voicemails apologizing and stating we should have spoken. I even visited her flat, but she closed the door. My anxiety grew as the wedding day drew near. Though I wasn't convinced, my partner kept urging me to let go, that everything would blow over. In a dream, I showed up for the wedding and everyone turned to stare at me, pointing and murmuring. I woke up shaking coldly. Update. Following my confrontation with Sarah, things deteriorated. When she told our mother about my allegations, she became quite irate. She called me, screaming about how right before Sarah's wedding I could be so selfish and worried. She shouted, "How could you accuse your own sister of such a thing?" She wouldn't listen as I tried to explain my perspective. She advised me to straighten this problem right away and apologies to Sarah. The stress on our family was intolerable. Sarah still avoids talking to me, and right now my parents are offended as well. Tom, my partner, persisted in telling me I was exaggerating, which just made me more depressed and irritated. I visited my parents' place to try to straighten things out 1 week before the wedding. I heard subdued voices coming from the side of the house as I got to the front door. Intrigued, I strolled to the garden and stopped in astonishment at what I saw there. Sarah and Tom were partly concealed behind a big plant. Locked in a passionate hug, they kissed firmly. Sarah's legs were wrapped around Tom's waist, His hand was beneath her top. They were completely absorbed in one another that they failed to even see me standing there. I thought I had been given a stomach punch. All the air left my lungs, and for a minute I was unable to move or talk. As the reality of what I was witnessing began to sink in, a powerful wave of anger and betrayal surged through me. My emotions overtook me and I found myself screaming, "What the hell is this?" My voice trembled, thick with the intensity of what I was feeling. The reaction from both of them was immediate. My sister and my boyfriend jumped in shock, their guilty expressions betraying them completely. Sarah's face drained of color, turning pale as she realized she had been caught, while Tom fumbled to find the right words, stammering, "It's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like, confirming every fear and suspicion that had been gnawing at me. Tears began streaming down my face as I choked out, "How could you? My own sister and my boyfriend." The pain in my voice was unmistakable. Sarah too began to cry, her voice quivering with regret as she tried to apologize. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, struggling to explain. "We didn't mean for this to happen." But I couldn't stand to hear any of their excuses. The betrayal was too deep, too raw. Without another word, I turned and fled, running back to my car. Their desperate calls for me to return fell on deaf ears as I drove away, my mind spinning with disbelief and hurt. As I sped away, my phone began to ring repeatedly, first Tom, then Sarah, and finally my mom. I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them. The pain was too fresh, too overwhelming. When I finally arrived home, I felt numb. I immediately packed a bag with some clothes and the essentials I would need for a few days. I couldn't stay here, not after what had just happened. I sent Tom a final text message, simply stating, "We're done, don't try to contact me again." Then I turned off my phone, cutting off any further communication, and left. Now I'm writing this from a hotel room in a nearby city, unsure of what my next steps should be. With the wedding just a few days away, I know there is no way I can attend. My relationship is shattered and the bond I once shared with my sister may be irreparably damaged by this betrayal. It feels as though my entire world has been turned upside down. Everyone made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong, but in the end I was right all along. The pain of that realization is almost too much to bear, and I find myself questioning how I will ever be able to trust anyone again after this. So Reddit, any advice on how to move forward from here would be appreciated. Update. After the devastating shock of discovering my sister Sarah with my now ex-boyfriend Tom, I spent several days in a fog, struggling to process what had happened. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages and missed calls from both of them, as well as from my parents, but I just couldn't bring myself to respond. I was too overwhelmed, too hurt. Eventually though, I came to see that Mark, Sarah's fiancé, was one person who definitely needed to know the truth. With a heavy heart I made the difficult decision to call him. When Mark answered, I could hear the confusion in his voice. He asked what was going on, mentioning that Sarah had been in a terrible state, saying that I had disappeared and wasn't responding to anyone. Taking a deep breath, I began to explain everything to him. I told him about the suspicions I had initially had, how everyone, including Tom and Sarah, had brushed off my concerns, and then I described in detail the scene I had witnessed in my parents' garden. Mark listened quietly, not interrupting, only occasionally making a small noise to let me know he was still there, absorbing everything I was saying. When I finally finished, there was a long heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then in a controlled measured voice, Mark simply thanked me for telling him, adding that he needed some time to process this information. With that, he ended the call. Afterwards I sat there, staring blankly at my phone, wondering what Mark would do now that he knew the truth. As the wedding day approached, I heard nothing further from him or from the rest of my family. Sarah had ceased trying to contact me and I began to suspect that she had somehow managed to convince Mark to forgive her. The thought that she might actually escape the consequences of her actions, that she could go on to have her fairy tale wedding while my life was in shambles, made me feel physically ill. I realized that there was no way I could attend the wedding. The idea of watching Sarah walk down the aisle, knowing what she had done, was too much to bear. Instead, I decided to spend that day alone, focusing on how to rebuild my life in the wake of such profound betrayal. On the evening of the wedding, I received an unexpected call from my cousin, Emma. There was an unmistakable tone of excitement and urgency in her hushed voice as she said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what just happened." Confused and intrigued, I asked her what she meant. Without hesitation, Emma dove into her story, recounting the events that had unfolded. She explained that everything had seemed normal at first. Sarah had looked stunning in her wedding dress, and Mark had been standing at the altar, ready for the ceremony to begin. But when it came time for the vows, Mark had unexpectedly stepped forward and announced that he had something to say. My heart began to race as I listened to Emma describe the scene. Mark, in front of everyone, declared that he couldn't go through with the wedding. He told the guests that he could not marry someone who had betrayed her own sister and devastated her life by getting involved with her boyfriend. Emma continued, recounting how Sarah had turned completely pale at Mark's words. Then, to everyone's shock, Mark turned to my parents and apologized, telling them that they needed to know the real reason why I had distanced myself from the family. Emma went on to say that Sarah had started crying. My parents had been left startled and perplexed, and the guests had started whispering among themselves in an attempt to make sense of things. Mark had then walked out of the church, leaving Sarah sobbing alone at the altar. It was like something out of a movie, Emma told me, her voice still tinged with disbelief. Everyone's in shock. Your parents are trying to get the full story from Sarah, but she's an emotional wreck. As I sat there, absorbing everything Emma had just told me, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, there was a sense of vindication, knowing that the truth had finally been revealed. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for the pain and turmoil this had brought upon my family. Emma, sensing my silence, gently asked, "Are you okay?" I'm not sure," I said truthfully. I never wanted it to wrap like this. After a little more conversation with Emma, I hung up and sat silently attempting to sort things. Though at what cost, the truth was out. My friendship with Sarah broke, my relationship with Tom ended, and now my whole family was in crisis. I came to see that although the truth was now clear-cut, it did not instantly correct everything. Healing and regaining trust still lay a long road ahead. But I felt a little relief for the first time since this entire ordeal started. At least now, I could begin to advance free from the weight of silent facts dragging me back. Regarding what next, I'm not sure. Though I know I will eventually have to face my family, right now I am living one day at a time. If nothing else, this encounter has shown me the value of following my gut feeling and defending myself even in front of people who question me. To all who helped me through my journey, thank you. Your words of encouragement have more value than you could possibly know. And to others in the same circumstances, keep in mind. Rely on your gut feeling and resist being gaslighted into disbelieving your own impressions by anyone.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
My parents skipped my wedding because I married before my perfect sister. Now their perfect family image is finally crumbling. After being together for 4 years, I, 32F, got married 8 months ago. Except for my sister Malene, 30F, and my parents, everyone went to the wedding. My parents' decision to skip the event was startling, but I wasn't overly shocked by my sister's absence because we've never really gotten along. However, considering our past, I should have anticipated it. I'll give you some background on our family's dynamics. I can't completely blame my parents for constantly favoring my sister over me. Throughout her life, she has been exceptionally good at almost everything. She was the center of attention in every room she visited as soon as she could walk. She won every spelling bee, science fair, and talent show in elementary school. Class president, valedictorian, and prom queen were all very much the same in high school. Tall, slender, and attractive enough, she pursued modeling while in college before concentrating on her business degree. She got her first modeling job during her sophomore year, and I can still remember it. To celebrate, my parents invited all of our family members and her friends to a lavish party. Her first professional headshot was framed and hung in our living room, where it remains to this day, directly above the fireplace. The same year I received my degree in computer science, they merely murmured, "Well done," and resumed organizing Malene's next photo session. She immediately climbed the corporate ladder after graduating and landing a job at a prominent company. She already has a corner office and a corporate car at the age of 30, making her a senior executive. In the meantime, I work for a respectable computer company as a mid-level software developer. Although I'm pleased with my work and it's a decent profession, it's not the type of employment that makes parents boast in front of the family. In addition, I'm bigger and shorter than my sister. My mother made crude remarks about my appearance, signed me up for workout classes I didn't want to attend, and put me on diets all the time when I was growing up. She would say, "Malene never struggles with her weight." Or, "You could look as nice as your sister if you just put in a little more effort." Even though I had learned to ignore these remarks by high school, they had an impact. Over the years, I've accepted these distinctions. I ultimately came to terms with the fact that my parents never took as much delight in my accomplishments as they did in Malene's. What was my option? I tried to get their approval for years by attending classes they recommended, joining clubs they encouraged, and even attempted modeling for a short time, a failure my sister never lets me forget. However, nothing was ever sufficient. I was merely the second daughter, and they were completely enamored with my sister's achievements. I gave up attempting to impress them sometime in my mid-20s. I concentrated on creating my own life, growing professionally on my own terms, and forming bonds with individuals that respected me for who I am. To be honest, following that, things have improved. Knowing that my parents were constantly concerned about maintaining appearances, I kept my interactions with them superficial in order to prevent conflict. During our mandatory Christmas meals and sporadic family get-togethers, I would nod and grin while they raved about Maline's most recent job, lover, or vacation spot. Since they had Maline to swoon over, they didn't seem to notice my emotional distance. Then, at a computer conference, I ran upon my spouse through a mutual friend. He noticed me, actually saw me, unlike my family. He liked my dry sense of humor, my ability to code, and yes, even my body type, right from the beginning. He never once said I should change or make comparisons to other people. He proposed to me after 4 years of dating when we were alone at home, enjoying takeaway and our favorite TV in the background. It was flawless. Naturally, I told my folks that I was engaged last year. My first clue should have been their response. There was no congratulation, only stillness. My mother then questioned whether I was certain I wanted to jump right in and recommended that I might want to improve my physical condition before the wedding. My father didn't say much at all. During the engagement party, my husband noted their odd reaction, which I was too anxious to fully comprehend at the time. They crouched over my mother's phone in a corner for the majority of the evening. My husband then informed me that he had heard them talking to Maline on the phone, who was clearly crying. They were talking about how this wasn't the plan, and how they never expected Rebecca to get married first, according to what he vaguely heard. There were some minor setbacks during the wedding planning process. Despite not even being engaged at the time, my mother had already made many wedding Pinterest boards for Maline and was not interested in assisting me in selecting a dress or location. My mother merely remarked that it was practical and suitable for my figure. When I selected my dress, a straightforward yet exquisite A-line gown that made me feel lovely. My future mother-in-law, who treated me like the daughter she never had, and I ended up working together on the majority of the preparations. I carefully reviewed and double-checked the guest list with my spouse to be sure no one was overlooked before sending out both electronic and paper wedding invitations. I am certain that my parents received theirs because the electronic invitations included red receipts. I called, texted, and emailed them several times after realizing they hadn't RSVP'd. My mails were either ignored or met with evasive responses stating that they were very busy and needed to check their schedules. I couldn't waste too much energy worrying about it because I was too busy getting ready for the wedding. My in-laws were incredibly helpful, offering assistance with everything from seating maps to floral arrangements. Even at the lovely bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister, the painfully obvious absence of my own family was never brought up. Even though my parents weren't there, the wedding day itself was beautiful. We held a laid-back afternoon celebration after the morning wedding in a garden setting. Everyone was right when they said we looked so content and in love. But there were times when their absence felt like a physical anguish, such as when I saw the front row seats empty or at the father-daughter dance that I was not able to attend. I sought answers after the honeymoon and wedding. They said they were deeply hurt, that they had never gotten a formal invitation when I eventually reached them on the phone. My mother launched into a lengthy tirade about how careless I was, how she had always wanted to assist in organizing her daughter's weddings, and how she couldn't comprehend why I would leave them out of such a significant occasion. I was perplexed by this since I was positive we had given them both kinds of invitations. During the call, I verified that we had indeed sent them by looking through our records. Even the physical invitation's delivery was confirmed. I didn't confront them about their attempts to gaslight me. I just said I was sorry for the error and hung up. Later, my husband brought up a number of incidents that demonstrated their true intentions, such as the way they appeared surprised rather than delighted when we told them we were engaged or the way they continued coming up with reasons not to assist with the wedding planning. Because he didn't want to add to my anxiety during the wedding planning process, he hadn't brought up these findings earlier, but in retrospect, the pattern was clear. The idea that I, the less successful daughter, was getting married before their beloved Maline was too much for them to bear. Their demeanor simply served to validate what I had always suspected but had resisted, that I would never be able to compete with my sister in their eyes. The most depressing thing was learning that even my wedding day, which ought to have been a celebration of love and fresh starts, turned into yet another front in their never-ending war to preserve their ideal family image, with Maline at its core. Maline recently got engaged to someone she's been dating for a year, according to family members I spoke with. In family group conversations that I don't participate in, my parents openly expressed their excitement about organizing an elaborate wedding for her. They are already boasting about securing upscale locations and luxury gowns, and my mother is taking Malene to private fittings at upscale stores. All the mother-daughter time I was not allowed. It's intriguing that a large number of our family are suddenly refusing to go to Malene's wedding and engagement party. My parents' actions at my wedding apparently became a topic of conversation in the family. I just tell my family members what I think is real when they inquire as to why my parents didn't attend my wedding. They couldn't bear it when I married before their beloved daughter. I present the facts as I perceive them, without embellishment or an attempt to win sympathy. My parents got in touch with me a few days ago and accused me of purposefully attempting to spoil Malene's wedding. According to their claims, the relatives they have spoken to are using reasons to avoid going to any of her wedding-related festivities. My cousin, to whom my sister vented, informed her that people are reluctant to come because they have heard about my parents' treatment of me. My parents claim that because I'm envious of my sister's impending lavish wedding, I'm spreading false stories. The problem is that I'm only telling folks the truth about what happened. Perhaps they should consider their conduct instead of blaming me for the results if the truth makes them appear terrible. As things continue to change, I'm finding it harder and harder to keep up the appearance of a relationship with my parents. Their behavior during my wedding finally made it clear to me that I would never be sufficient for them, regardless of what I did. Their absence at my wedding is no longer the most difficult aspect. It's coming to terms with the fact that I never had the kind, encouraging parents I always desired. I'm concentrating on creating a life with someone who genuinely appreciates me for who I am right now, but I'll keep you updated if anything important changes. First update: since my last post, which was 2 weeks ago, a lot has transpired. I ultimately made the decision to speak with my parents face-to-face over their actions at my wedding and their current charges that I ruined my sister's special day after reading your encouraging remarks. I felt it was time to put everything on the table when they began texting me about their tarnished family history. My parents quickly started making accusations during our phone call, saying that I was jealous of Malene and had planned the entire thing. I did something I had never done before. I agreed with them, but not in the way they had anticipated, in place of defending myself as I usually would. I said to them, "You're correct. I'm envious. Not Malene's career, not her accomplishments, not her appearance. I'm envious of the unwavering love and support you've shown her, which you never even made an effort to show me." There was a pause in the line. My mother then began claiming that I was exaggerating and that they had always treated us equally. Something broke inside of me at that moment. Feelings that had been repressed for years came flooding out. I informed them of each birthday when Malene's most recent success eclipsed my own accomplishments. When Malene had a modeling callback, my mother canceled my high school graduation dinner. About how her prom outfit cost more than the total cost of my college textbooks for a year. I continued despite my father's attempts to cut me off by accusing me of exaggerating. I talked about how it was to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own. I told them how painful it was to see my parents' seats vacant and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything, from wedding preparation to clothing buying. Their reaction was instructive. They flipped it on me rather than accepting any of my arguments. "Why did you never speak up if you felt this way?" As if I hadn't tried to speak with them for years, my mother insisted. My father went on to say that by discussing these emotions with our family members, I was being unjust and spiteful. My mother said something at that point that ultimately clarified everything. "We never imagined you'd go to such lengths as to try to ruin Malene's wedding out of spite, but we always knew you were insecure about her success," she stated. "This is not how we brought you up." I became aware that they couldn't even hear me. They believed that their behavior and my emotions had nothing to do with the entire circumstance. It has to do with Malene's reaction. They were more worried about her impending nuptials than the hurt they had caused me, even during this discussion about their absence from my wedding. I didn't attempt to make things better for the first time in my life. I didn't retract or apologize. Rather, I expressed my thoughts to them directly. "You're correct on one point. I was raised by you. You instilled in me the belief that I would never measure up. That Malene's accomplishments would always be more significant than mine. That upholding your ideal family image was more essential than my feelings. However, you also taught me that I deserve better than this, which was something you didn't mean to teach me." Before my father spoke, there was a long pause. He spoke in a cool, collected tone. "Maybe it's time for us to stop acting like we're bad parents, since you've already determined that we are and you obviously take pleasure in seeing us suffer. Since you are family, we assumed you would assist in resolving this issue, but it is clear that you have made your own decisions." The last blow was delivered by my mother. "Perhaps you simply couldn't cope with not being the center of attention, even though we always tried to treat you both fairly. Rebecca, that's not our fault. You made the decision to play the victim. I refrained from arguing. Why would it matter? Everything I had been saying had just been validated by them. They were unable to admit their involvement in any of anything, even at this last discussion. I just hung up and said goodbye. I was surprised to feel relieved after the call. Tears were shed, to be sure, but they weren't the frantic, heartbreaking ones I remember from my early years. They were liberating tears. For the first time, I had expressed everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about how I felt. Later, my husband saw me gazing at the sunset from our back porch. He sat next to me and grasped my hand without saying anything. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked him after a time. "No, but you have," he said, squeezing my hand. "And that is what counts." He is correct. I've changed. The young child who frantically tried to win her parents' approval is no longer there. They no longer need to validate the woman who came out of that last conversation. Although acknowledging that my parents will never be the people I need them to be is painful, it is not as painful as holding out hope that they would change. For the first time, I don't really care what happens with my sister's wedding or the family drama. I've had my say, and they now have to deal with whatever comes up. The most peculiar aspect? I feel as though a burden I've carried my entire life has finally been lifted. Although it's not the happy ending I had hoped for with my parents, perhaps it was the one I needed, the ability to quit striving for love that ought to have come naturally. Second update. 3 days have passed since my run-in with our parents, and things have taken a surprising turn. Malene made the decision to become involved in the drama, but her strategy failed horribly. My sister sent me a thoughtfully composed message yesterday morning. She had developed a condescending tone over the years, and it was evident in her text. "What you said to your parents was totally inappropriate. They have helped us through every stage of our lives and given us everything. You cannot simply blame them for being poor parents because you are insecure about the decisions you have made in life." She continued the message with her typical blend of moral superiority and covert jabs. "I understand that your wedding wasn't exactly what you had envisioned, but that doesn't mean you should try to destroy mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honors those of us who have put in a lot of effort to meet specific standards. Rebecca, not everything needs to be a contest." I didn't bother to answer. I've discovered that interacting with her merely provides her with more ammunition after years of putting up with her manipulative conduct. I just blocked her number instead. Malene has never been one to put up with being ignored, so I assumed that would be the end of it. My husband, who was laughing so hard that he could not speak, called me at work a few hours later. Malene was apparently unable to get in touch with me directly, so she found his personal number, probably via a common acquaintance, and sent him a string of texts outlining the precise reasons why our sister relationship has never been good. She began her initial communication to him in a sufficiently professional manner. As Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out. However, it soon turned into her actual motivations. She informed my husband that he had an obligation to help me behave in a more suitable manner because he was the new man in Rebecca's life. The messages become increasingly patronizing. "Family dynamics are complex," she told my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, adding that someone with Rebecca's sensitivity might not understand the bigger picture. She advised him to assist me in seeing reason before I irreparably harm family relationships. Her attempt to play on what she believed to be his social climbing impulses was the true kicker, though. In fact, she wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects and, by extension, yours." Having always been able to see through Malene's facade, my spouse thought her attempt at manipulation was humorous. He particularly liked her presumption that her business rank or the prospect of networking opportunities would somehow impress him. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" We went over the messages together when I got home that night. I was laughing with my hubby instead of feeling offended or upset. Seeing Malene's deceptive methods exposed, particularly when they were aimed at someone who was totally impervious to them, was liberating. I learned something significant about my sister as a result of this encounter. She is still that insecure adolescent who needs to tear others down in order to feel superior, despite all of her achievements and success. It's clear how little she knows about good relationships that she believed she could control me by manipulating my husband. When her direct approach failed, she swiftly turned to trying to use my husband against me, which was the most revealing aspect. She used to do precisely that in high school. She attempted to turn my friends against me when she was unable to bully me directly. Different decade, same strategies. With this fresh viewpoint, I now understand how Malene's actions went beyond simple sibling rivalry throughout our early years. She made a concerted effort to keep her status as the favorite child, always telling our parents, and me, how much better she was. She had to overshadow whatever I accomplished. She had to point out my shortcomings to everyone I made friends with. My response to her games is different now. Her messages would have caused me to fall into self-doubt 10 years ago. I would have been upset and hurt 5 years ago. Today? Simply put, I'm sick of the drama and find her blatant attempts at manipulation amusing. My husband's response was ideal. Rather than becoming embroiled in her drama, he merely responded, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being. As her husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I think it's best if you direct any future concerns to Rebecca directly. Have a nice day." Malene sent one last message after not receiving the desired response. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, Malene's attempt to assist has further strengthened my resolve to keep my distance from the destructive dynamics of my family. Nothing has changed, as evidenced by her messages to my spouse. She is still the same cunning individual who feels the need to dictate every story and who perceives any departure from her ideal family script as a danger. Knowing that her attempts at persuasion were so totally unsuccessful is perhaps the most pleasant aspect of the entire incident. She succeeded in bringing my spouse and I closer together rather than causing us to drift apart. Totally unconcerned by her fears of social repercussions, we joked about her texts and planned a weekend trip during the evening. I've come to understand that true family isn't about upholding facades or dictating stories. It's about standing together, laughing together, and supporting one another when someone tries to manipulate you, even your own sister. I'm more certain than ever that I'd be better off keeping a safe distance from Malene's wedding drama. Instead of getting sucked into my family's never-ending power struggles, my husband and I have made the decision to concentrate on creating our own happiness. Success is said to be the best form of retaliation, but I'm coming to realize that real success isn't about impressing people. It's about accepting your decisions and surrounding yourself with individuals that encourage rather than impede your own development. I feel more successful than ever by that metric. Third update. After my sister's unsuccessful attempt to control my husband 2 weeks ago, things have taken unanticipated turns. The situation is becoming worse despite my parents' desperate attempts to repair their reputation. I found out through family ties that my parents have been on a mad quest to correct the narrative. They have been phoning each relative separately and accusing me of spreading vile tales because I'm envious of Malene's ideal wedding. They claim that I'm just resentful since her wedding will be far more sophisticated and gorgeous than mine was. According to their most recent tale, I purposefully left them out of my wedding so I could act like the victim. It's funny that they still reside in the same home they've owned for 30 years and have the same email addresses since the invention of email, but they're saying I sent their invitation to an old email address and an old physical address. The good news is that their attempts to limit the harm are failing miserably. Our family members don't believe it. Actually, a number of family members have shared their personal accounts of my parents' history of partiality. According to one aunt, my mother had previously engaged in similar antics at family weddings in an effort to guarantee that Malene was the life of the party. The way my extended family has reacted to my parents' manipulation is the most fulfilling development. Important family members, some of whom were expected to have significant parts in the event, have stopped supporting Malene's wedding. They may no longer have access to the exclusive location they were able to get through family ties. Even a family friend's luxury garment business has unexpectedly experienced scheduling conflicts. At a family get-together last weekend, things reached a breaking point. It seems that when someone naively inquired about my wedding pictures, my mother became upset. Out of jealousy, she started a defensive tirade about how I had changed after getting married and was attempting to destroy the family. Her tantrum backfired, stunning a number of relatives who were unaware of the circumstances and further harming their well-maintained reputation. It's especially ironic that my parents' frantic efforts to maintain their ideal family facade are the reason it's falling apart. Each time they attempt to justify their absence from my wedding, they wind up disclosing more about who they really are. People are becoming more aware of their deception the more they attempt to portray me as the bad guy. Family members are now picking sides after previously remaining impartial. Recently, even my father's brother, who had always kept silent to maintain harmony, apologized for not speaking up sooner about how they treated me. He has made the decision not to go to any of Malene's wedding-related festivities with his family. I don't have to answer any of this explicitly, so I haven't. The truth is taking care of everything for me. Malene and my parents always wind up revealing more of their destructive conduct when they attempt to twist the tale. It comes out that all those years of remaining silent and putting up with their treatment in an effort to keep the peace was really just a way of allowing their actions. My husband said it in the best possible words. They constructed a facade of the ideal family over many years, but it was based on emotional manipulation and partiality. Eventually, it was going to fall apart. I'm doing better than ever, personally. I no longer have to worry about attempting to win my parents' approval. The stress of controlling Maline's emotions has subsided. I'm not concerned about upholding their ideal family image for the first time in my life. Sometimes the best retaliation is just letting the truth speak for itself rather than taking action. I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the courage to advocate for myself. You have no idea how much your guidance and encouragement have meant to me along this path. Sometimes you need to see what true family support looks like from strangers you met online.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.